Pacific leaders and their delegations are arriving in Rarotonga for the largest annual leaders meeting, the Pacific Islands Forum. Climate change, economic recovery, regional security and fisheries are just some of the big-ticket items for the leaders set against a backdrop of geopolitical tensions between the US and China. Lydia Lewis filed this report from Rarotonga.
The host and chair of the Pacific Islands Forum, Cook Islands Prime Minister Mark Brown, has drawn a line in the sand in light of growing geopolitical interest in the region.
We are not a region of competition. We are a region of collaboration. We will work with whichever development partner is willing to work to our terms.
This year's meeting will be led by Pacific leaders, not superpowers like the US and China swooping in on the action. Mark Brown says previously all the oxygen has been sucked up by the US, noting Hillary Clinton's visit to the last meeting in the Cook Islands in 2012.
When Hillary turned up, the whole focus, all of the oxygen that we had generated as a Pacific region was sucked up by the USA.
And there's a lot on the Pacific agenda this week: climate change, post-pandemic recovery, regional security and tuna, to name a few. Australia's Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, who is currently in Beijing, will be here. He's flying here straight from China to head their 70-strong delegation. But former Papua New Guinea politician and Forum Secretary-General Dame Meg Taylor says Australia has a lot of work to do on the climate front.
The issue that Australia continues to produce coal and gas, and just what is going to be done about it.
Then there's the question around Australia's joint bid to host a UN climate change conference in 2026 with the Pacific, which some Pacific leaders are supportive of.
The Pacific elders are just a bit more wary of how it's going to be done. I personally think that if Australia wants to host, Australia should host. But to Australia to host for the Pacific, to what purpose? That's my question. When we have very different points of view about the climate issues.
Several Pacific leaders have already landed for the big political meeting. Already in Rarotonga are Niue Premier Dalton Tagelangi, French Polynesia President Moetai Brotherson, Palau President Surangel Whips Jr., Tuvalu Prime Minister Kauseo Natano and Tonga Prime Minister Huakava Meiliku Siaosi Valeni. The new Prime Minister of Vanuatu, Charles Salwai, will be attending, with climate change likely front of mind as his nation recovers from Category 5 Cyclone Lola. Missing in action this year will be Solomon Islands Prime Minister Manasseh Songovare, whose country is preparing to host the Pacific Games in a fortnight. James Marape, Papua New Guinea's Prime Minister, is also absent from the arrivals list, and Fiji's Prime Minister Sitiveni Rabuka is reportedly only making a short appearance. For the second consecutive summit, the contentious issue heading into this week's meeting is the replacement for the Forum Secretary-General role, currently held by Cook Islands' Henry Puna. Micronesian leaders' announcement of former Nauru President Baron Wanga as their candidate drew widespread criticism in the region, given Mr Wanga's poor track record on the treatment of refugees, interfering with the judiciary and corruption allegations. His candidacy was accepted by the leaders as part of an agreement to mend a rift with Micronesia and bring Kiribati back into the fold after it withdrew from the forum last year. RNZ Pacific understands Baron Wanga is attending this week's meeting in Rarotonga. Niue's Premier Dalton Tagelangi shared his thoughts on the matter.
It's a turn for the Micronesian representative, and that's who they have elected to be their Secretary General. So of course he'll be taking over after Henry.
Mark Brown wouldn't budge on his position either.
This is not about my personal views. As the chairman of the Pacific Islands Forum, my job is to make sure that our meeting is conducted in a way that produces fruitful outcomes for all of our region.
Something Prime Minister Brown was keen to talk about is this year's theme: our voices, our choices, our Pacific way. He says it's a pertinent one for all Pacific countries who will not be dictated to.
The assumption that maybe Pacific Island countries don't know what they're doing is starting to sound very insulting and getting to the stage of being offensive in some cases.
First up on this week's agenda, the leaders will split off into their regional groupings to discuss their priorities. The opening ceremony is Monday evening local time. Then the leaders head to Aitutaki on Thursday on the Waka Te Ariki Moana for the leaders' retreat.